between ODM and UDA. Very interesting pronouncements or demands from the ODM side, demanding 50% share of government. Wakili, what do you think? Do you see that as a game changer?
Okay, not a game changer per se, but a reality which has been for some time. Since 2002, coalition politics have been our mainstay. In 2002, Kibaki and Anak only could win emphatically once they became a rainbow coalition of some sort. In 2007, once the NAC imploded, you had a case of Kibaki cobbling together a PNU kind of a coalition. And ODM then, even though it was seen as a party, it was a movement of different personalities. They had their famous Pentagon, and that's why it fell apart soon after the election. Just like every other elections in Kenya, we elect around personalities and parties that only live within, by the time we go to the next election cycle in Kenya, the last 20 years has always been a new coalition, a new team altogether. In 2013, another coalition. In fact, 2013 coming forward is the time then we are now having what we call hardening of two major coalition blocks. So that in 2012, you had a case for COD, which was bringing almost 3 parties. At that time, you had UDA for the mother party to ANC of Mudavadi, and then you have Ford Kenya, then you had ODM. On the other side, you had URP and TNA. 2017, fast forward, again, those ones collapsed. It became a new chapter altogether. It now became a new Jubilee coalition and a new parties. And then you had COD expanding to NASA. And then 2022 was, which I feel is a clear break. We are now almost the American way of dealing, where you have 2 major blocks. And what is happening then going to 2027, there's a real possibility, which is now coming to fruition, of the same case as 22. We'll have 2 hardening blocks, where you'll have the United Opposition, as they're trying to figure out. Then you have the Kenya Kwanza, which is now an expanded one. For ODM, it's a survival mode. Parties in Kenya live as much as their party leader. The life of a party is tied to the party leader. And I think the president is trying to break that jinx, because every other party in Kenya whose leader has gone to live or died or whatever the case, the party dies. So I find that it's more or less like a survival game for ODM, but it's a win-win for both. Why? When ODM is posturing and say 50%, you would understand where they're coming from. They're trying to up their stakes. I was looking at the numbers.
Do they have the gravitas to make such demands at this point?
They have a reason, and I would wish to disagree with Mutunga briefly. If you look at the numbers, UDA has 143. ODM has 89. Those are the 2 major parties. So if you look at that matrix, it is 2 to 3. So he's right, UDA is bigger, but not double. Number 2, coalitions would narrow that. If you look at the coalitions then, Kenya Kwanza coalition was ahead with 181, but the Azimio was closer with around 171, except now the shifts that you could face. So when it comes to coalition, it narrows to 50-50. When you reduce to parties, 2 to 3. UDA ahead. So when ODM makes such a claim, they make a claim for posturing purposes. When they say that, there'll be 2 points of conflict. This coalition will fight for 2 things. One, that 50-50 kind of a thing would end up where they get 35%. That is a realistic what I think UDA can give ODM, 35%. And that 35, in fact, that 35 to 40% will be negotiated regionally. I don't think it will be one size fit all, the way BAMBA used to do it. BAMBA was the only one who could negotiate for the other regions. This time you'll find ODM negotiating regionally, so that the coast bloc led by Hassan Joe and the current Mombasa governor, Kilifi, Kwale, Taita Taveta, will negotiate as a bloc. Then the Nyanza brigade will negotiate, that is Kisii and the Luo Nyanza side. Then you go to Western, the Oparanyas will have their own. So ODM will not negotiate collectively as a corporate entity as a BAMBA, it will be independent. And the best they could get is 35-40. Yes. However, on the part of UDA, which now I really empathize with Oshimios on the UDA, it's like a polygamous marriage. When it was monogamous, everything belonged to this one family. The moment there's a new kid on the block and there's a new family on board, then it means tunasongeana. So we have to really create space. The only advantage is that they have a father who is very, very fair. The president is so far so good. What made him win in 22, if I'm to just give my 2 cents, is that he had a different approach. Azimio's approach going to 2022 was, it is full. nyumba imejaa, to the point that you had Raila appointing would-be cabinet ministers. So it was difficult for people to defect into Azimio. But for UDA and Kenya Kwanza, William Ruto intentionally opened all the doors and windows and said, whoever came, he signed coalition agreements up to the last minute, up to Alfred Mutua, up to Kingi, people whom you wouldn't say much how much they bring. If you go to Ukambani, that is under lock and key for the Kalonzo Wiper team. That's a fact. Up to the ward level for Alfred Mutua. But the president was this magnanimous for optics purposes. And you could see he was signing with anyone and everyone. And for some reason, he kept his word. So I feel going to 27, he has an upper hand when it comes to coalition talks because of his track record. Every time he has signed coalition agreements, it makes sense. And I think in listening to ODM making the 50-50 thing, it is basically to carry them on board because ODM needs the coalition more than anything to survive outside Raila.
And talking about ODM, because we've talked about how important it is even for our politics and a democracy to have a party like ODM, and it survives. But we've seen the history of coalitions in Kenya and what they've